and welcome to Motorcycle News, and welcome to the 2025 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS. Now, you join us at the iconic Portimão circuit in Portugal, and we've had 2 days riding the new Speed Triple. We've had a day on track, and we've had a day on road. And before you get too excited, it has rained and rained and rained the whole way, and then it's rained a little bit more. You know, it's absolutely chucked it down on both days, but it's been a real good test, I think, of real world conditions, especially being a British tester. We all know what the weather can be like. So I'm going to start with the road, and then we'll move on to the track because, as I say, it rained very hard, so we can only take limited learnings from it. But before we do that, I just want to give you a little bit of context about this bike. So you might be sat here looking and go, well, it doesn't really look any different to the Speed Triple I know. And that's because this bike is based on the outgoing Speed, which arrived in 2021. And it's obviously going for 2025. And that's because this bike now adheres to Euro 5+ emissions regulations. And on top of that, there's a number of other clever tweaks to the bike, which I will come into in some detail. This is now the sole Speed Triple in Triumph's range as well. Before, there was the half-fared sort of cafe racer style Speed Triple RR, but that has been discontinued for 2025, despite only coming into the range for 2022. So, sad to see that go. Where does this sit in terms of its rivals? Now, this has, as you can see already, before I go into any details, it's got Brembos, it's got golden Öhlins, it's got lots and lots of power. This is kind of away from the realms of your MT10s and the new Honda CB1000 Hornet SP. This has got a bit more power. This has got 180.5 brake horsepower. So that brings it into the realms of BMW's recently updated S1000R family, KTM's 1390 Super Duke R family, and also Aprilia's recently updated Tuono V4 family as well. Triumph themselves do not consider Ducati's Street Fighter V4S a direct rival to this bike, but I think if you're watching this, you're going to draw a natural comparison to the Street Fighter. But where the Street Fighter costs £24,500 in S trim, this is £17,500. So a massive saving, but no getting away from the fact that this is still very expensive. This is a premium motorcycle, and it's the jewel in Triumph's crown, really. You know, the Speed Triple's been in Triumph's range since 1994. I wasn't even born in 1994. You know, this bike has, or the Speed Triple name, has become synonymous with Triumph. You know, it's kind of, you think Triumph, you think Speed Triple, and, you know, that's part of the reason why it's still here. It's, you know, the two names go hand in hand, and this is like a celebration of what Triumph are capable of. This is the most powerful, most advanced Speed Triple ever made. As I said before, 180.5 brake horsepower now, makes just shy of 100 pound-feet of torque as well, and the peak torque has actually come down as well for 2025. So it's come down from 9,000 RPM to 8,750 RPM, and that's kind of to just make it a little bit more usable on the road, give it a bit more shove at the bottom end. But with nearly 100 pound-feet of torque, you know, there is a lot of shove sort of everywhere anyway. On top of that, you've got up and down quick shifter, and you've got these lovely golden tubes of goodness here. Now, these are Öhlin's latest Smart EC3 semi-active suspension. It's on the front and it's on the rear. Now, this electronically adjusts your compression and your rebound. Preload remains manual, but this is a very, very clever system, and it's only available on a couple of bikes at the moment. It made its debut with the 2024 Honda Fireblade SP. It's available on this, and it's available on Ducati's most recent Panigale V4S and the Street Fighter V4S. So this is, you know, this is a real cutting-edge motorcycle, and it's been designed in Britain. You know, it's really nice to see, actually. So I'm going to give you, you know, that's enough of a breakdown, really. If you want more details about the sort of nuts and bolts of the bike, you can go to Motorcyclenews.com, and you can buy paper as well to get a full rundown of this bike. And I'm just going to break it down now by section from what I've learned from 2 days of testing. Okay, so although I've already touched on it, I want to start with the engine because it's lovely, basically. You know, as I said, it's rained hard. We haven't had a chance to really maximise it, but we have had a good old go at wringing its neck. And this thing makes one of the best standard, you know, Euro 5+ compliant engine noises of any bike on the market, I reckon, at the minute. The production noise on this is addictive. It's velvety, it's warm, it's delicious. It's so nice, it's so distinctive. You know, that triple sort of purr. It's not screaming like a 4-cylinder. It's not sort of rattly or gravelly like a V-twin. It's its own distinct sound, and I think it's probably the best triple sound on the market. If you want to unlock a little bit more noise from your bike as well, Triumph do an optional extra, a Krapovich end can for this. It is homologated though, so it's still going to have all the cats and whatnot in there, and baffles and things like that. And it does cost over £1,000. So, you know, there might be some other options hitting the market later on. Part of the reason for the new performance on this bike is an updated exhaust. So it's a single exit unit, but what they've done basically is they've made it freer flowing, and that's allowed Triumph to tune a little bit more power and performance out of the motor, whilst also achieving better emission standards. It's also 150 grams lighter, which doesn't sound like a lot, but everything helps. And it's more compact with a more mass centralisation as well to try and help with handling. On top of that, they've also had a go at the crank balancing of the bike as well to try and make things a little bit smoother. And I would say that's worked, because this is a very, very smooth engine. You know, there's minimal vibes. You don't feel anything through your extremities. I'm not getting tingling fingers. I'm not getting tingling toes. And it's a real nice bike to just kind of sit on and live on all day. You know, combined with this seat, which is really lovely. It's like a gel seat. There's so much sort of squidge in there. You know, you could spend so many hours on this, should I say, at one time. And you know, if you had a bit more protection at the front, I think it'd be a cracking touring bike as well. But this bike isn't designed for touring, really. It's a nice byproduct. This is about being a performance super naked, and performance it does. This bike is really fast. You know, I've had a winter of commuting, just getting from A to B on bikes, you know, just trying to get there alive in some cases. And the first time I wound the throttle on this, it was like, bloody hell, motorbikes are actually really quick. You just forget sometimes, and this thing has got so much pull, so much linear drive, that you're just like, okay, right, we're off then, are we? You know, this is a really fast motorbike. There's no getting away from it. 10 years ago, superbikes were making performance that this makes, and you know, and it shows. It sounds lovely, and it's been, you know, really good fun around Portimao. So the other thing as well is it kind of wants to lift the front wheel quite a lot as well, and because of that, Triumph have engineered in a very clever wheelie control system. So it sort of works with the traction control to keep you safe, but it's a 4-stage wheelie control system. So in its lowest setting, it will keep the wheel kind of just hovering above the floor, and that's to give you maximum linear drive forwards, which is what you want on a racetrack. But this bike is also capable of turning you into an absolute legend without trying. This has got basically wheelie help. Or wheelie for dummies. You know, what you can do is you can turn it to stage 4, which I have this afternoon, and it will basically use special algorithms, use the 6-axis IMU, use various sensors, wheel speed and things like that, to basically maintain the bike at 60 centimetres of lift off the floor. It might go a bit higher than that, it might go a bit lower than that, but basically if you know, come along in first or second gear and just nail the throttle from sort of midway around the revs, the front wheel comes up and it just holds you. And you just feed the throttle on and you just feed it gears and it will just carry on taking you. You know, I'm absolutely terrible at doing wheelies, but this bike kind of turns you into a bit of a hero without even trying. I mean, obviously it's something that you should only use on a private road or on a racetrack, but knowing that that ability is there is really quite nice. And in sort of a health and safety nanny state kind of world, it's really refreshing that Triumph have done that. So now I want to talk to you about the Olin Smart EC3, because this is arguably the most important update to this bike. You know, this is a very, very clever system, and it's so complicated. There's so many parameters that we could make a 30-minute video on just that. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. As I say, you can go to Motorcyclenews.com in order to get the full lowdown on how it works. But basically, it uses spool valve technology to allow for quick adjustments, and it replaces a manually adjustable system, if you remember, on the old bike. This is actually the first naked speed triple to feature semi-active suspension ever. The RR version had the Smart EC2, the previous generation of this, but this is the first naked one. Now, the old speed triple was criticised by various testers for being quite harsh on the road. It was set up sort of with a bit of a track setup, and it was a little bit unforgiving, where previous speed triples before that had been, really good, fast road bikes. And this bike is a really good, fast road bike. This, when you kind of soften everything off like we have done in the rain today, it's become much more plush, much more compliant, much more comfortable and easier to live with. If this was rock hard today and we've been riding on those Pirelli Supercorsa V3 tyres, which it comes on as standard, with the standing water and everything we've dealt with, it would have been pretty unpleasant probably. But the fact that we, put this in road mode, back the suspension off a little bit to make it a little bit softer, just makes your life so much easier. When we came to the track yesterday as well, the base setup in the track setting is for a rider of 85 kilograms. Well, I don't weigh 85 kilos, even with this dead cow on. I weigh about 65 kilos. So, being able to back that off to my weight and then the suspension kind of sort its life out without me getting dirty, without getting any tools out, without pretending to know how to use tools, it's just really nice. This last few days have been a real lesson or a real sort of illustration on why having semi-active suspension is nice when you can get it. The downside, of course, is that the preload remains manually adjustable. However, through the TFT dash, if you put your weight in, it does provide some sort of suggested settings on how to get the most from your bike from a preload perspective. So whilst we're still talking about the handling, I want to talk about the brakes as well, because we've got Brembo stylemas are radially mounted at the front and they look just lovely. Who doesn't love a nice Brembo caliper? We've also got a Brembo master cylinder and a Brembo lever. And the brake feels lovely. We haven't been sort of the last of the late breakers over the last few days because it's been so wet. I'd be telling fibs if I told you otherwise, but using it on the road or using it on the track to my level, there was lots of nice feel. I could trail brake, I could hold the brake. Obviously it's combined with a cornering ABS, and I had confidence to kind of brake quite hard, despite the conditions being quite iffy. Also, when we're out on the road, I quite like to hold a bit of rear brake when I'm sort of tipping into a corner just to steady everything up. And again, nice bit of feel, not too extreme, nice and progressive, which is what I like, and it just gives you that little bit more confidence to tip in even when the conditions are a little bit iffy. Whilst I'm talking here as well, the bars have had a change as well. They're ever so slightly higher. We can lay the details underneath if we need to, but basically what it means is the rider triangle is just that little bit nicer. The bars are sort of up a little bit more, so it's a less aggressive position than before. They're nice and wide as well, and you can kind of just sit in this kind of position. You can move around the bike quite nicely. It helps on track to move off the bike because you're not sort of squashed up like on a proper sports bike. And on the road, it just helps to sort of minimalise that fatigue and helps you just kind of muscle the bike from side to side as well. Not that it's a heavy bike anyway, it weighs 199 kilos with 90% of its fuel on board, so it's quite manageable anyway, but everything helps, doesn't it? And it was quite nice to be able to just get that direction change quite quickly. Also aiding that direction change is, of course, the lighter exhaust, but also it's got newly designed wheels as well. It's got a new 5-spoke design at the front and a 7-spoke design at the back, which you can see because this has got a single-sided swing arm on the other side of the bike. It looks really lovely. And they save between 200 and 300 grams, somewhere between the 200 and 300 grams at each end. Again, sort of reducing inertia and helping the bike to change direction. So on top of that as well, I just want to kind of talk about what it's like to sit on this bike. I'm 5'6", maybe 5'7" with my squeaky boots on that I've got. And this bike is really easy to get on, really easy to manage. If you're a competent rider and a confident rider for the power, then this is going to be sort of, nice and accessible for riders of most heights as well. I've not had any pains. In fact, I've had loads of room to move around today and sort of stay comfortable. And I think it's going to be sort of very, very well received by an awful lot of riders. One thing that I do want to talk about though, which is kind of an elephant in the room of all super nakeds, is the lack of wind protection. Now, of course, a naked bike by definition doesn't have any wind protection, but on this at Portimao, there's a very, very long front straight, and we were hitting around about 160 mile an hour indicated by the time we hit the braking zone. And my head just wanted to rip off my shoulders. There's no wind protection whatsoever. This bike has got an optional fly screen and with a sort of additional lip as well, which is about 300 quid's worth of optional extras. So normally you don't have any of this. And when you get to the end of that straight, it just absolutely kills your head. At the end of the day, I had a properly sore neck. So it's one of those things where, if you want to take a bike on a circuit, a fast bike on a circuit, would you really spend your money on a bike with absolutely no wind protection? Because, to be quite honest, I wouldn't. I would buy a bike that had a fairing because it would give you some wind protection and you'd be able to focus on the job in hand rather than stopping your crash helmet from ripping off your head. This is a wonderful road bike. I've really enjoyed riding it on the road. It makes a great noise, it's comfortable, it's crisp. As I say, it made me look like a hero with the wheelies. But as a track bike, I'm not sure it's where I would spend my money. The other thing as well, the dash is a lovely 5-inch TFT, colour TFT, but it's a bit slow. You know, you turn the bike on and there's like a nice little sort of welcome rider, Triumph Speed Triple graphic, but it takes ages. I just want to turn the bike on and go, but I've got to wait for it to cycle through this this little song and dance so that I can get going. You know, it's not the end of the world. I'm nitpicking here, but it is something. You know, we're stopping and starting quite a lot today with photos, video stops, all sorts, and it just starts to sort of get at you a little bit. One thing that is good though, this has got a keyless ignition, this bike, and the keyless ignition does deal with the fuel tank as well. That was a nice refreshing touch because, you know, how many times do you get a keyless fob, but then you've got to find the fob on your person to then open the fuel tank. So none of those dramas here. So I just want to end the video by talking about my experience on track because, you know, this bike, this place, you know, it clearly showed that Triumph were confident in the product that they'd made because this place is one of the hardest racetracks I've ever been to. You know, I've never been here before, obviously watched it on the telly. Portimao, it's a round of the MotoGP World Championship. Everyone's seen Jack Miller jumping over the waterfall with both wheels off the ground. And everyone said it was going to be a difficult track. And it's sort of difficult and then some. It's so challenging. There's so many blind crests. So I spent a lot of the day sort of trying to learn where I was going as well as trying to work out something to say about the bike. But what I will say is once I'd actually started to work out where I was going and I got a bit of faith in the wet tyres as well because it had rained quite hard, I really did start to enjoy the feel from the front end. So, you know, using heavier braking, it feels composed. Obviously, the semi-active suspension is always working, always updating. And you just sort of get a bit of a dive on those front forks, but it feels composed. There's no drama there. You just have to worry about sort of going through the gearbox and just sort of peeling in towards your apex, which is really nice. That gearbox, while I'm here as well, is an up and down quick shifter, and it's beyond crisp. It's so nice. There hasn't been any issue up and down the box, both on circuit and also when we're out and about as well, sort of using it at lower RPMs. The other thing that really stood out on track as well is obviously brilliant ground clearance. You kind of have your cake and eat it, really. You can sit up and be comfortable and move around easily, but you also don't have to worry about scraping the pegs anywhere, which is really nice. The other thing as well is obviously the speed. I've already alluded to it. This is a very fast motorbike. 160 mile an hour is nothing to be sniffed at, and I'm pretty sure there was more to go. We just had to start braking for the corner. But, you know, if you do decide to take yours on track, I think you'll have a wonderful time. But if you do want to do that, I just think it's so important to invest in a little bit of wind protection. You know, I ran a 1290 Super Duke R KTM as a long-termer a couple of years ago, and I just invested in a little bit of protection, and it made the world a difference. It took some of the wind off of my shoulders, and I think if you want to, you know, get the most out of your Speed Triple, you really must do the same. So I'll leave it there. As I say, if you want more details, please go to Motorcyclenews.com, where you can get the full launch report, you can get sort of in-depth tech updates on the bike, and you can get the story from when this bike first arrived at the start of this year, and of course loads of other great stories as well. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please remember to give us a like and a subscribe, and why not leave us a comment as well. Tell us where this bike fits in the you know, in the order of Super Nakeds. Would you order one? Do you think it's enough of an update over the old one? I'd love to read all the comments from you under the video. So like I say, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you very soon.